Hey there, friend watching this right now, yes, you, the one who clicked play because something in your heart whispered that tonight might be different. Imagine you're behind the wheel on a stormy night, windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the rain, your own life feeling heavy with unspoken regrets. Suddenly, through the blur of water and headlights, you spot her, alone, shivering under a flickering gas station light outside Boise, Idaho. She's not waving for help, not crying out, she's just standing there like the rain itself is trying to wash her away. What would you do? Would you drive past like the world always does, or would you stop? Stick with me until the very last word, because this story isn't just about them, it's about the moment kindness knocked on your door too. By the end, I promise you'll feel something shift inside you, a quiet fire that says, I can be the reason someone believes again. Let's begin. The storm hit Boise like it had a personal grudge that night. Thunder rolled across the empty highway like distant warnings, and Alex Thompson gripped the steering wheel of his old pickup truck a little tighter than usual. 35 years old, grease still under his fingernails from a 12-hour shift at the auto shop, Alex was the kind of man who fixed engines but couldn't quite fix the hollow ache in his own chest. His wife had left 3 years ago, taking their dreams and the laughter that used to fill their small apartment. Since then, nights like this one felt longer, empty roads mirroring the empty rooms waiting for him at home. He wasn't looking for anything. He was just trying to get through. Then he saw her. Under the weak yellow glow of the abandoned gas station sign, a young woman stood with her arms wrapped around herself, soaked to the bone. Her dark hair clung to her face in wet strands, and her thin jacket did nothing against the wind that howled like it wanted to tear the world apart. She wasn't hitchhiking, she was simply there, like someone who had run as far as her legs could carry her and then stopped, unsure where to go next. Alex's truck slowed without him even deciding. The tires crunched on the gravel as he pulled in, headlights cutting through the downpour like two gentle eyes. He rolled down the passenger window, rain immediately spraying inside. Miss? You okay? Need a ride somewhere dry? She flinched at the sound of his voice, stepping back into the shadows. Up close, he could see she was maybe 28, with wide hazel eyes that held storms deeper than the one raging around them. Her lips trembled, but not from the cold alone. I'm not getting in a stranger's car, she said, voice barely above the rain. I'm not that kind of girl. I've learned the hard way. Alex didn't argue. He didn't push. Instead, he killed the engine, letting the truck sit there idling softly, and looked at her, not with pity, but with something quieter, something real. The rain drummed on the roof like 1,000 tiny heartbeats. Your eyes say otherwise, he replied gently, the words slipping out before he could stop them. They weren't a line, they were truth. In those eyes he saw exhaustion that went beyond one night, fear that had been carved deep, and a flicker, tiny but unmistakable, of hope that someone, anyone, might see her without wanting to take from her. She stared at him for a long moment, rain streaming down her cheeks like tears she refused to cry. Then something broke. Maybe it was the way he didn't leer, didn't demand, didn't even turn the truck back on until she decided. Slowly, she stepped forward and climbed in, pulling the door shut with shaking hands. The cab filled with the scent of wet earth and something fragile, desperation wrapped in courage. I'm Hannah, she whispered after a mile of silence, her voice cracking like thin ice. Hannah Carter. I left him. My ex. He wasn't kind. He made sure I knew that every single day until I couldn't breathe anymore. Tonight I just walked out with nothing but the clothes on my back. No phone. No money. No plan. She laughed bitterly, a sound that hurt to hear. Stupid, right? Standing in the rain like some lost puppy. Alex kept his eyes on the road, but his heart twisted. He knew that kind of pain, the kind that leaves bruises no one else can see. Not stupid, he said quietly. Brave. Takes more guts than most people ever find. he didn't press for details. Instead, he drove her to the little diner he knew stayed open late, the one with the flickering neon sign that promised hot coffee and no questions. Inside, under warm lights, Hannah wrapped her hands around the mug he bought her, steam rising like tiny prayers. Bit by bit, she told him pieces, the controlling words that turned into shouts, the isolation that cut her off from friends, the night she finally realized staying meant disappearing forever. Alex listened without interrupting, his own story hovering unspoken, how he had once been the man who promised forever and then watched it shatter. When she finally ran out of words, tears mixing with the last raindrops on her cheeks, he offered the only thing he had, "My couch is yours for tonight. No strings. Just dry clothes, a blanket, and breakfast in the morning if you want it. Tomorrow we figure out the rest. You don't have to be alone in this storm anymore." Hannah looked at him across the table, eyes searching his face for the trap she'd learned to expect. But all she found was quiet steadiness. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as prey, not as broken, but as someone worth protecting. She nodded, a small, trembling smile breaking through. "Okay," she whispered. "Just tonight." That single word hung in the air like the first crack of dawn after endless night. As they drove to his modest apartment, the rain began to ease, almost as if the sky itself was exhaling. But neither of them knew yet that this was only the beginning of a journey neither had planned, one that would test every scar they carried and force them both to choose kindness even when fear screamed otherwise. The days that followed unfolded like pages turning in a book neither wanted to close. Hannah stayed on Alex's couch for a week that stretched into 2, then quietly into a month. He never asked for rent, never made her feel like a burden. Instead, he woke early to make coffee strong enough to chase away nightmares, left notes on the fridge, "You're safe here. Take your time." And drove her to the local women's shelter during the day so she could talk to counselors who understood the invisible chains she was still breaking. But healing isn't a straight line, it's a winding road full of potholes that look like your old life. The first challenge hit like thunder returning. 2 weeks in, Hannah woke screaming from a dream where her ex's voice echoed in the dark, promising he'd find her. She sat on the couch shaking, fists clenched, whispering, "I'm not that kind of girl anymore. I won't go back." Alex didn't turn on the light or crowd her space. He simply sat on the floor across from her, voice steady. "You're right. You're the kind of girl who survived. And surviving means you get to rewrite the ending." That night he shared his own story for the first time, the night his wife left and he sat in the same silence, wondering if he'd ever be enough again. In that shared vulnerability, something shifted. Hannah reached across the space between them and took his hand, not out of need, but out of recognition. Two broken people, holding pieces of each other's light. Work came next. Alex helped her fill out applications with the patience of someone who'd fixed 1,000 stubborn engines. She landed a part-time job at the same diner where they'd first talked, serving coffee to strangers who reminded her of the woman she used to be, tired, hopeful, scared. The pay was small, but the tips she earned with her quiet smile felt like victories. Yet doubt crept in during quiet moments. "What if he finds me?" she'd whisper late at night. "What if I'm too damaged for anyone to ever really see?" Alex never had easy answers. Instead, he took her to the auto shop on weekends, teaching her how to change oil, how to tighten bolts until things held strong again. "Every scar tells a story," he'd say, wiping grease from her cheek. "But it doesn't have to be the only story." The biggest test arrived on a crisp autumn evening, 3 months later. Her ex showed up, somehow tracking her through an old friend's slip-up, standing outside the diner as she closed up, his shadow long and familiar in the streetlight. Hannah froze, heart hammering like the storm that first night. He called her name, voice slick with the same old promises twisted into threats. For a terrifying second, she felt herself shrinking back into the girl who believed she deserved nothing better. But then she remembered Alex's eyes that rainy night, how they had seen past her fear and straight into her courage. She lifted her chin, voice steady despite the tremble. "I'm not that kind of girl anymore," she told him, the same words she'd spoken to Alex, but now they rang with power. "And you're not welcome in my story." Before he could step closer, Alex pulled up in his truck, called by the diner owner who'd noticed the trouble. He didn't fight, he simply stood beside her, solid and calm, phone already dialing the police. The ex backed away into the night, defeated by the simple fact that Hannah was no longer alone. That night, back in the apartment, Hannah cried, not from fear, but from release. Alex held her as the tears came, years of pain finally washing away like the rain that had started it all. "You did that," he whispered. "You chose you." In the quiet that followed, she looked up at him, eyes shining with the same light he'd first seen. "No," she said softly. "We did. You stopped that night when everyone else drove past. Your kindness gave me the strength to stand." Weeks turned into seasons. Hannah moved into her own small studio apartment, paid for with her own earnings, but she never stopped visiting Alex. Their friendship bloomed into something deeper, slow, careful, built on trust earned one honest conversation at a time. He proposed on a clear spring evening under the same gas station light where it all began, now fixed and glowing warmly. She said yes, not because she needed saving, but because she had chosen to love again. Years later, they sat together on their porch, watching their daughter chase fireflies in the yard. Hannah turned to Alex, voice full of wonder. "Remember that night? I said I wasn't that kind of girl." He smiled, pulling her close. "And I replied your eyes said otherwise." Turns out they were right all along. So here we are, dear viewer, at the end of their story, but really, at the beginning of yours. Life will throw storms at you. You'll meet people standing in the rain of their own pain. The question isn't whether you'll drive past. It's whether you'll stop, look into their eyes, and say the words that change everything, your eyes say otherwise. One act of kindness. One choice to care. That's all it takes to rewrite someone's ending, including your own. Carry this with you tonight. Be the light. Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting for you to pull over and believe in them. And when you do, you just might save yourself too.